Hey, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode like today's episode with Mike Sando from The Athletic. Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks.
Mike's quarterback's tiers had dropped, and he has been everywhere. So we're excited that he gave us a little bit of time today. Always glad to have you back, Mike. I'm curious, when did the quarterback tier start, and what was kind of the genesis of how it got started?
Yeah, so started in 2014. This is the 12th year of doing it. It kind of, bled out of some conversations I'd had with some people in the league about just, hey, what is the league really looking for? How do you evaluate these guys? How do you, rank them? And so the first year I did it, I think I only had maybe 26 voters. I didn't know as many people in the league, and we were still sort of defining exactly what the tiers are. But then it really kind of crystallized, and as I got more experience of doing it and knowing more people are in the league, expanded it up to 50 people. This year there's 6 GMs, 6 assistant GMs, 6 former GMs working in other roles. I think I got 5 other executives, 8 head coaches, 19 assistants, 15 of those are coordinators. So it's a good kind of cross section. And what we'll do after the draft, when the quarterback decisions have kind of been made, then we know, where people are going to be, who the likely starters are going to be. I take all the veterans, I cut out the rookies, but take all the veterans and put them in a kind of a spreadsheet. And then I'll start making the calls or visiting people in person, and we'll go through them, confidentially, and I'll ask them questions. If there's, okay, you got this guy as a 1, why, right? Tier 1 would be the best, all the way down to tier 5, which means you're not even a starter. So we can get into whatever those definitions are, but just know 1 is best, and there's 5 of those this year, and there's typically anywhere from 3 to 6. I think we had 8 one year when all those guys were playing. Breeze and Brady and Mahomes was good and all of that. But you're going to, at any one time, usually have 4 or 5 guys in tier 1. There can be maybe 10 in tier 2, and those are kind of the quarterbacks you generally feel like maybe we could go to the Super Bowl with our guy, without having so much around him, like a super team or something, right?
Mm-hmm. So all 50 guys rank the same group, like all 50 guys are ranking. You give them the paper or something like that. They rank them from 1 to whatever.
So if we're doing this on the phone, Doug, and you're a GM, I would say, okay, well, let's get these guys in tiers, and I would text you the tiers criteria so they could have that if I was not doing it in person. Otherwise, we'd be looking at it. And we'd say, okay, Doug, we'll start with Atlanta. Okay, I got 2 for Atlanta because Kirk Cousins is there. You never know what they could trade him. Maybe he's going to pop up somewhere else. So I want to have him in the survey too. Michael Penix, what do you think? And you would say, well, only 3 starts. I think the upside, I think this guy's going to be a high 2. I'm going to give him a 3 for now, but I just really liked a lot of the things I saw. Or you might say 3 starts. He was up and down. I'm going to just give him a tier 4 is either not enough info, or it could be like Joe Flacco, where you don't think he's going to start the whole year if he's a veteran. So you may give him a 4, whatever. So we'd go through all the guys that way, and then I'd say, all right, Doug, here's your 1s. These are your 1s. That group sound good. We'd run through them, and you'd say, this doesn't quite fit. Let me move this guy. And I'd say, okay, what are you thinking on him? And you'd say, he's just always been so tough with me. He's whatever. You'd give your explanation, and I would, that would all kind of go into my thinking, and I would try to share some of those things, when I put together the piece. And so most of the guys that I do it with, they all enjoy doing it. Everybody likes to talk quarterbacks. Everyone wants to see kind of, where they stack up, how they have it. I know coaches that have their, position groups do it on their own separately, or even the whole entire side of the ball. The staff will do it just as kind of like, hey, this is a good exercise. How do you guys see it? And so it's really fun.
Do the same 50 come back every year? Is there something for continuity, or it doesn't matter? It's just an exercise.
No, it's really, for me, it's a race before I go on vacation, so it's, I can get 50 guys, and I'm mindful of who I'm getting. Like I want to make sure I get a certain number of GMs or head coaches, right? You don't want to just have, 50 of the same thing, right? So I'm paying attention to that, and I kind of have a list of guys. There's some guys that there's probably a few guys who've done it every year. I bet it's not 5 guys. It's a long time, and it's gonna change over. But there's probably, I would guess that half of the panel at least would carry over from the year before, and then there's just sometimes I don't catch a guy that I normally would like to catch, or you might have to put out 65 calls to get your 50, right? Just because
Sure.
it doesn't line up. Some guys are go on vacation or they're too busy or we don't connect.
So Mike sounds like a very comprehensive project, an awesome project going back to 2014. I'm just curious, did one quarterback just rise above the rest, a clear outlier? Was clearly the best quarterback of that class period just kind of popped out to you? I'm assuming Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes over the years.
Yeah, so Rodgers has the record for the most
Ooh,
unanimous Tier 1 seasons. He has 6
okay.
times that he had all 50. And then he
Okay.
had other times where he had like 46 or 48, really way up there. So he's been up there. Obviously, Brady. I think maybe Breeze has done it. Russell Wilson had one year where he was unanimous, but it's only,
Hmm.
I think Joe Burrow was unanimous this year and Mahomes. So there's like only like about 4 or 5 guys that have ever been unanimous. It might be Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, and now Burrow. There may be one that I'm missing in there, but that's an exclusive group.
Hmm.
We in the NFC East, Mike, we're always kind of talking about who's got it best at the quarterback position. We'll get to Jaden later, but I'm curious from an exec standpoint where they kind of look at Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts, where it's like one guy obviously is doing the winning, and one guy I think if you're getting to choose as an exec, most choose one as a better quarterback. That's my perspective. I'm assuming more look at Dak as the more talented guy, even though Jalen's had more winning. Is that how they look
Yeah.
about it around the
Well,
league? Or-
Jalen Hurts is actually a couple ticks ahead of Dak Prescott in this survey, but I think they're they're in a similar spot. Dak Prescott for the 2021 to 23 seasons, I believe they had the second best record in the league to Kansas City, but they don't never do it in the playoffs. So I think that puts a real ceiling on how high Dak's going to go. Like at a certain point, to be in the upper echelon of twos or get into tier one, you got to make a difference when it matters. I think that's one of the reasons we haven't seen Justin Herbert get into tier one. Great talent. I mean, everybody would like to have him as their quarterback for the most part, except for 5 or 6 teams who have better guys, but you got to do it eventually. And I think Dak is sort of stuck. Jalen Hurts doesn't rise higher because, they put it on Saquon Barkley, right? He's got this great offensive line, great receivers, top defense, and he does what he needs to do, but the pressure's not on him every week.
Mhm.
They're not loading him up and saying, hey, let's go throw it 35, 40 times because that gives us our best chance to win. I think there's a feeling in the league that there's probably a balance for Jalen Hurts where he's in his sweet spot and that you wouldn't want to, put much more of it on him. You might get diminishing returns. He's not quite as good of a passer as some of those other guys, maybe not as good as Dak even,
Mhm.
uh, but Dak, Dak isn't as athletic anymore either. He was never a great runner, but I think he's probably stiffer than he's been in the past after the injuries, and he's just a little bit older. And so, he's not really, Dak's not really scaring anybody with anything. He's just solid, efficient quarterback when he's healthy.
Mm.
Hurts is more, the context of what's around him, but he can run in a way. I think he drives their running game in a way, even for Saquon Barkley, kind of like Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry can play off of each other a little bit. Hurts adds a lot of value that way. It's just that type of value traditionally isn't overly valued by the evaluators. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
even when Lamar Jackson was a star, but he would lose every year in the playoffs and look bad because he wasn't as good of a passer yet. Like that, the rushing only got him so far. He was always like this high tier two guy. And now that he's done it, passing the ball and looks better in the playoffs, he launches way up there into tier one. So, that's kind of what people value in the league is ultimately throwing the ball.
So, Mike, being a DC-based reporters out here, we're really happy to see Jaden Daniels land at number 6 on your tier list and tier 2 overall. Just curious, when did the narrative change for Jaden Daniels? Because, prior to this, about a year ago in August or, maybe more so during the draft time, it was a competition, right? Caleb Williams was probably the clear-cut QB1. Drake May maybe right above him. But then Jay Daniels had this supernova ride, just kind of rose to the top. When did the tides start to change in the NFL circles? And are you surprised by this by any chance?
Well, I'm a little bit surprised that, not that Jaden had a great season, but that there's a lot of question marks raised about Caleb Williams. That was really what struck me about this piece was he was the one guy from the 2024 class, Caleb was, who there were real questions on. Like the other guys, it was mostly optimism. Even Drake May had said, well, it's a bad supporting cast around him, but I kind of like what I saw, right? Or Bo Nix, you could really see the plan with Sean Payton. Hey, I want to see more of that. Looks good. Penix, good opportunity there. He played pretty well in 3 games. JJ McCarthy, hey, you know what? Even if we have concerns about him, he hasn't played, he's been hurt. You can see Kevin O'Connell, having a good run with a young quarterback. Caleb Williams was like, man, the processing was really alarming. He took all those sacks. I'm worried about what that means for his future. I think for Jaden Daniels, it started to turn really with the touchdown pass against Cincinnati. Remember? That was really a big one early in the year where you go, wow. It seemed like in the moments, in the big moments, this guy was big. He was ready to go. It wasn't too big for him. And that was a huge theme of the feedback from the people that I talked to, the 50 people, was like, he just so clearly belonged and it wasn't too big for him, and a good passer too. It's not like it's just his running. So when you go to the NFC Championship game with a bottom 10 defense, you're going to get a lot of credit as a quarterback.
100%.
I was thinking about, you mentioned Lamar earlier, and I was thinking about his lack of success in the passing game. And then you get a guy in like Todd Monken, who really kind of changed the philosophy and what they're doing. They're not getting away from the running, but just helping Lamar out. I think about the same thing with Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury and what they were able to kind of do together. While it probably doesn't go into the rankings, how important is the landing spot for these guys?
I think it's important. And I think what the Ravens did with Lamar early on is exactly what they should have done with him. The reason people were predicting him to fail was because they were predicting they were going to try to run an offense that would be like a traditional offense. And that would have been hard for him early on. So there does come a point, though, where, all right, has he progressed to a point now where we can do more? And they did. I think that worked really well for them. So the landing spot is important. I think Cliff Kingsbury was a great fit for Jaden Daniels early on. And now we'll see over time how that goes. People have criticized Cliff Kingsbury, remember with Kyler Murray, and Kyler sort of plateaued. But a lot of that had to do with Kyler. Kyler's at the top of tier 3 now, which is where he was when Cliff was there about, So, I think that Jaden Daniels seems to be more a student of the game, more polished, and he's not hindered by his height. I mean, clearly the consistency for Kyler Murray is affected by the fact that it's harder for him to operate from the pocket as consistently. And to be a consistent player in the league, you have to be decent throwing from the pocket. You have to, because the running stuff is icing on the cake. You can't live off it. It's too inconsistent. You especially can't live off it if you're not passing, right? We know those offenses. That's what the Jets are going to try to do with Justin Fields. And it's only going to get him so far. Right. So Jaden Daniels isn't limited by just having to rely only on his running. He's good at it, but he seems to be, ahead of the game in terms of what he can do as a passer, and certainly ahead of Caleb Williams. So that could, or ahead of Kyler Murray. So, I think Cliff Kingsbury has more to work with here than he had in the past. And now it will be interesting to see, with defenses having a year and shutting them down, teams are going to be more ready for the Commanders. So, are the game plans 20% better? Because it's hard to get 20% better as a player.
True.
If you played, from what he did last year, it would be pretty amazing.
Absolutely. So, Mike, one of the bigger narratives or bigger stories this offseason is the Terry McLaurin situation here in D.C. There are some reports about Adam Peters being kind of a shrewd, maybe prudent negotiator, which I appreciate. I think it's nice to have a strong forward-minded GM. I'm curious, what have you heard about the Terry McLaurin situation? What are your perspectives on Adam Peters? And if you have a prediction of what could potentially happen this upcoming fall?
Yeah, I would think that he's going to be there. The McLaurin's going to play for the team. But what's so interesting about it to me is that, when you come in with a new GM, the people there that have equity, like a Terry McLaurin, don't have that same equity with the new regime. So I live in the Seattle area. And after 1 year, Mike McDonald moved on from Geno Smith, who was a Pete Carroll success story. He moved on from DK Metcalf, who was a Pete Carroll success story. Remember Pete Carroll taking his shirt off in that meeting with him, and they had a bond. Tyler Lockett, a franchise icon, sort of an older version of Terry McLaurin, right? Somebody who's just been a great ambassador for the team and has been a consistent performer. Maybe he's not the best receiver in the league, but he's the best receiver for the Seahawks or the best receiver for the Ravens. All of that stuff doesn't matter as much when a new guy comes in. So that's always interesting to me how that gets handled. You start bringing in a Deebo Samuel and giving him some money because he actually has he may have more equity with Adam Peters than Terry McLaurin does.
Mm-hmm.
But from a commander standpoint, McLaurin should have way more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting thing. It's like there can be feelings hurt when a new regime comes in because, yeah, they respect Terry McLaurin, but they haven't won together, other than last year. But you know what I mean? There's not a big history there.
Yeah.
And so McLaurin may feel like he's owed something and he may be right. Mm-hmm. But to the new regime, what have you done for, what have you done for me now? Right. It's not that 10-year history or however long McLaurin's been there, 7-8 years, doesn't mean as much.
Yeah. Which is interesting because to your point, Deebo does already have a relationship with Peters. And they're about the same age. They're probably going to be looking for, I guess, if the number's 28, I don't know if Deebo is going to get up that high, but in this offense, who knows what Deebo can do. Interesting by you on that. I hadn't thought about maybe they appreciate Deebo more just because, it's the devil, I guess, as you say. Good.
Yeah, I think the histories matter, and when you have an organizational reset, sometimes the guys who've been there a long time don't feel as appreciated,
right?
Because it's new.
As I look at these quarterback tiers, the job of the college coach is to win college football games, not prepare quarterbacks for the NFL. The job of an NFL head coach is to win football games, not get 2-year starters in college up to speed for the NFL game. Does the NFL have a quarterback problem?
Well, yes. I think the problem is there's, the league is so profit driven that it's less development driven, right? And so there's not enough reps for players to develop. And then, the safety component of it has come in too, where the concessions the players have won have really been about practicing less and, having less stringent practices or less contact. And I think like in this league, the offensive lines are probably worse, than they used to be. Receivers are probably better, right? I mean, I think the receivers, there's more guys who are just coming out and catch the ball. But, the quarterbacks are coming in without the same type of training maybe, and they're playing behind offensive lines that aren't as good. I think the defensive fronts are probably as good or better, than ever with athleticism on that side of the ball coming at you. So I think it's a harder place to develop. I think it would be better if they, like in the preseason, the preseason is different. The practice, there's not 2-a-day practices to get your guys reps, and there's not a Europe league or something like that where a Kurt Warner or a John Kitna or some of those guys who became great players or just solid players got to go, work on their craft. And so I think it's easier now to get chewed up and spit out before you even had a chance.
Last one for me before we get out of here, Mike. Were there any surprises on the list for you?
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise of Matt Stafford, peeking his head into tier 1. I think he only had 5 more tier 1 votes though. So he was real high in 2 and just kind of went over. That could be like we talked about having some new voters. Maybe I just happened to get a few guys that were higher on Stafford. I think the conversation around Caleb Williams being negative as it was a little bit, I wasn't expecting it to that degree. I thought Jared Goff might fall with Ben Johnson leaving. Didn't happen. So those would be a few things that kind of stood out to me that I wasn't sure about going in.
All right.
Mike, we appreciate it. Thank you, buddy. As always, have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you.
See you. All right, Doug, what was your takeaways from the interview?
I mean, first of all, I think the process is interesting. And I think where our guy is says a lot for like what the league actually thinks about him.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm pretty happy with the way Jaden Daniels was rated overall, number 6 overall. I think he does fall in that category. Jaden Daniels is definitely a rising star. He's an elevator of talent. I wanted to kind of pry and ask Mike more questions about Terry McLaurin, but I didn't want to like upset him or kind of or push the envelope that direction. He seemed to have the politically correct answer, saying that McLaurin is going to play for us next year. So he kind of put that out there. But I'm curious if I asked him, like, how bad would it affect us if Terry McLaurin didn't play this year? Because I do feel like it's going to be a hit. Doug. Like, I don't know. Do you have any level of concern right now with the way the team has been looking and without having our top two wide receivers?
The only thing that I worry about is that when you talk to people from the Bengals, when they had those like longer holdouts, it took longer for their offense to get going. And with so many new pieces on the offense, including two new tackles, a new receiver, if Noah Brown's back, I mean, he only played half the year. So like, that's a lot of pieces to try to work into a new system, particularly with Debo being going to be used. I mean, his work usage is going to be high, apparently, from the way you see them moving him all over the field. So it's as far as the other question, what is my concern level? It's extremely low simply because there's just no way that Terry isn't out there on week one, whether it's with an extension or not, George. I mean, he's under contract, right? So they can just say play or don't play. And as we've talked about a bunch, the problem for Terry is the age. So he literally can't not play this year because he gets another unvested year. So Washington still keeps the year that they have him under contract. He comes back the following year, and they're still saying, hey, now the number's 23, 25. Like, it's a small bump now because you're older and we'll franchise you the next year if we want. It's an impossible situation for Terry. And frankly, George, and then I'll kick it to you. Obviously, his agent has gone and asked other teams about what they might be willing to pay.
Yeah.
And it's obvious that nobody else is going to pay it. I bet you Washington offers him more money at 28 than any other team in the league is willing to offer him at 30, 31 years old.
You brought up a great point. I didn't even think about the whole vested year where if he doesn't play, we still have contractual control over him for next year anyway, right? So he'll still come back with that 1 year left of his contract, and he's still under, for lack of a better words, Commander's possession, right? They still have him. It sounds like his agent mishandled it a lot, right?
I told you that a month ago.
Yeah, somebody dropped the line. I don't know who you might know off the top of your head, but a reporter shared they reached out to, like, I think it was Charles Robinson that said that basically they heard that he wanted tier 1 money. They talked like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson money up in that upper 35, and it's kind of like dumbfounded the Commanders. Like, whoa, we didn't even think that was even a part of the conversation. So that's very interesting. I do think Terry is going to play. I think I'm confident in that. I'm concerned though overall, Doug. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm a pessimist. Maybe I'm like I've been watching the Commanders my whole life, Redskins my whole life. That preseason game was ugly. I felt we just got punched in the mouth. I felt like the Patriots wanted it more. We got bullied on both sides of the ball. Like, yeah, I know it was the third string players versus the Patriots starters, but they didn't look prepared. And I'm afraid that a lot of us are assuming it's going to be steady growth, like 12-5, and we're going to be better again this year. But I'm afraid that Terry McLaurin not practicing might lose a step or might come in with a hamstring pull when he plays week 1, right? Or Noah Brown, we're expecting him to be wide receiver 3. He hasn't even played football since December. Like, why are we relying on him to produce 700 yards this year? And then the Giants have a great pass rush. The Giants, we won last year. We swept them last year. But if you guys remember the first time we played them and we beat them, I think it was like, 5 field goals? And it was like an ugly game. The kicker missed their extra points, and we barely won that game. How bad would it be, Doug, if we lose week 1 to the New York Giants?
I mean, it would frustrate people. I can see it. I guess I'm higher on the Giants than a lot of other people.
Me too.
The defense has got a chance to be real nasty. If Russell Wilson is 50%, and maybe they only get them halfway through, like maybe they're still – but, I mean, they've still got Malik Neighbors. I like Theo Johnson. That offensive line is better this year. If Andrew Thomas comes back –
Tracy's a good running back.
Better left tackles in the league, right? So, I mean – yeah, and they're going to get after it on that defensive line. To your point, is nasty. They added Abdul Carter. They frankly had a really good draft class. So, yeah, while I wouldn't be picking them to lose to the Giants in week 1,
I agree.
Would it shock me? I mean, I guess not. it wouldn't shock me if this team goes 10-5 and still makes the playoffs too, right?
I can see that for sure. I can see that.
That's what this team needs to do is get their ticket to the playoffs just like any other team and go out there and let Jaden Daniels do what it is that he does. And I think that's what we're looking for. Anybody that thinks this team's going to have the same magic that it did last year, go back and rewatch some of last year before the season starts. There was a lot of magic down the field. I was talking to Rio yesterday. It's like, I've said this a bunch, and you know it. What Jaden did last year, as far as just picking the team up and carrying them down the stretch, was something usually you only see in basketball, because one guy can pick up the other 4 or 5 guys and say, come on, we're going, and just drop 40 a night for a couple of weeks. That's not something that happens in football. One guy doesn't usually make that kind of difference.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a 5-win football team without Jaden Daniels on it last year. He literally picked them up and carried them on his back down the stretch. And the players know it. They're not going to shy away from telling you that's the truth. So, yeah, while expectations are through the roof, I think that a 10-5 expectation is still reasonable. And anybody that doesn't want to take 10-5 and have 2 back-to-back 10-win seasons, like, where have you been for the last 2 decades? Like, be happy. It's, you know, that's where we're at. So I mean, they asked this on the Trap or Die podcast the other evening. How many games if they have to put Terry on the pup list, let's say things just aren't going right, he's threatening not to play, they can put it on the toe, he's more of a distraction. None of those things I think are reality, but let's just say for whatever reason he doesn't play the first 4 games. What realistically is their record through there?
But the first 3 games, it's going to be interesting.
4, right? If they put him on pup, he's got to miss 4. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm trying to know if you can pull up the schedule. It's going to be a difficult one, Doug, because I think the Giant game is going to be a close game, no matter what. Right? The Giants are actively game planning for the Commanders this whole summer because they have all that time in the world to do so, right? So they're ready. Week 1 is going to be a good matchup. The problem is the Giants have a great defensive pass rush. 4 days later, they go up into Green Bay for week 2 on a short week Thursday night. That's why it's a little bit scary, because that Green Bay game is a 50-50, right? We should beat the Giants pretty handily, but you never know. It's an NFC East game. You never know how that goes. You go against the Giants, and then what's 3 and 4? Do you have it in front of you? Is it Raiders, or what's the third?
Raiders and Falcons.
Raiders and Falcons. Okay, so I can't see us losing to the Raiders. So I think we'll probably walk away 2-1, one way or the other. We either beat the Green Bay or we beat the Giants. We beat the Raiders as well. The Falcons are going to be interesting. I think the Falcons are going to be a fun team. I think we can beat them.
We beat them last year, but not handedly.
It wasn't handily.
No.
It was a close game, and I think Penix would probably. This maybe just a little favoritism, but I think he might be the second best quarterback in the class. I think people love Bo Nix. I can see Michael Penix having a great second year. Bijan Robinson is great. I have him in my fantasy team. I'm excited about that. They have Drake London, a great wide receiver. They have great offensive weapons, and I think they invested in their defense too, so it should be a little better. It'll be a good matchup. I can see them walking away 2-1, 2-2, or I think the floor would be 2-2. The best would be 3-1. I think. I mean, if we're walking away 4-0 without Terry McLaurin, we're going to the Super Bowl. I'm feeling pretty good about that.
I think they can get to if for whatever reason and the worst happens, I think they can get to the playoffs without Terry. I think they have no chance of going to a Super Bowl or maybe even an NFC Championship game without Terry when everything gets dialed in for the playoffs. I thought it was interesting what Mike said, and maybe not enough people are talking about this as far as maybe Adam Peters likes and doesn't love Terry McLaurin. Maybe Adam Peters in this offense loves Deebo Samuels and likes Terry McLaurin. And maybe if he knows he's got Deebo coming up, who's going to want, say, 25. I'm not sure what Deebo is getting paid this year. Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
I thought it was 19 or 17, but I think
he gets a raise to 23. It's $5 million a year cheaper than what you're looking at paying Terry McLaurin. And I'd suggest that that Deebo may have the better season this year. Like last year was weird for Terry, right? Because yards per play was down for him, touchdowns way up. But that was that touchdown number is an outlier. You think guys get to 14 touchdowns every year? No, they don't. That is a big. Was he second in the league in touchdowns last year?
Jamar Chase. Yeah, Jamar Chase.
14 is a big number. If you think he's getting to 14 again, he's probably not. And the one thing I'll say before I kick it to you is that this team is now fully invested in analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the numbers just say that, I mean, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, like Andre Johnson, all these guys, 33 years old, who had better careers, Hall of Fame careers, still fell off that cliff at 33 years old. So, and remember, because they've got 1 year of Terry McLaurin, you're not looking at paying him starting at 30, right? You're paying him now for 31, 32, and 33 if that's a 3-year extension.
100%. To be honest with you, the hot take is it's probably smarter not to play Terry McLaurin. I'll be honest with you. Like, I think we talked about it before on the show, Doug. There's a moral connection and there's a financial connection, right? Terry McLaurin has been the consummate professional. He's done everything for us, played strong for 11 years. He's the captain. I want him on the team. I want him to retire a Commander. I want him to be in the Ring of Honor. I don't want to see him on another jersey anywhere across the league. However, if you're thinking financials, if you're thinking, hey, what can we do with the extra money? Like, is it smart to go a different direction? We saw it, right? The Giants drafted Malik Neighbors. Granted, it was a high pick. I would say he's arguably better than Terry McLaurin right now, right? I mean,
Yes.
he has the upside for it for sure, right? Then they're paying him at 1/30th of a price or whatever, 1/10th of a price of what they're paying Terry McLaurin. Like, it's always smart to draft a wide receiver. You can always get one and invest that way, right? $33 million. Let's say they land on that are $28 million. You can split that up between 2 or 3 starters in other positions, Doug, right? You can get like another linebacker, or a tight end, a strong safety, a different running back. You can add up and build a team in a different fashion. Like, obviously, Tim McLaurin is a great player, and I want him on the team. But if you're looking at it as Adam Peters, like, you are a businessman, you're a CEO of a company, and you're looking at your managers and your positions and your employees and how you want to allot that money, it's a different conversation. I think that's why we have to be fair. We have to trust the process. And that's one thing I'm there with. And I don't know if you saw it, Doug, but I saw a really great article by John Keim. He talked about why Terry McLaurin isn't being paid by Adam Peters, of what the stall is. And what I pulled out and what I tweeted was Josh Harris is the antithesis of Dan Snyder. Like, Dan Snyder jumped in and he forced the initial Terry McLaurin contract to, kind of build some good, publicity and to get a good name for himself. But the thing is, like, Josh Harris isn't like that. Josh Harris, he receives information, he gets the analytics, he looks at the data with Adam Peters. And I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Peters wrote out a pretty compelling argument. It's like, hey, Josh, this is why I don't want to pay Terry, and this is a threshold to where I'm going to be with him. And, back me up on this. And I think that's where we're at. Like, we're not hearing any owner pressure. We're not hearing any big movement, to be honest with you. It seems like Adam Peters drew his line in the sand. Like, here we go. Like, maybe I'll go to 28, but this is where I'm at. That's kind of what I'm getting from that.
I was listening to a podcast this morning, and I forget whose it was now, but basically it's like that environment that Peters came from with Lynch out in San Francisco. The object was not to get a fair deal or a good deal; it was to win the deal.
Yeah,
they want to win, and that's what part of this is too. Like, it's not about being fair or what's right. These guys want to win every deal. It's when you hear them when they're on the phone on draft day, when you get to hear a little bit of that. He has that nice, cool smile that goes with it. But you can kind of tell, like, he wants to rip the heart out too and win at all costs. The other thing, George, about this contract with Terry, the other problem is that the tier 1 guys are making so much money. And there's only 4 guys in the league probably that really are in that tier 1, get you $38-40 million, because they're going to get 14, 15, 16 targets every game. And then even then you probably feel like you didn't get them enough targets. And so the guys that are down in the 2 level are looking up at that 38 million. But those guys, like Terry, I'm sorry, is not one of those guys. And he typically would be setting a market if he got somewhere at 28, 29. That used to set the market for wide receivers. Now you're 10 million behind the number 1 tiers. But again, you're not one of those guys, to me, that goes out and dictates a game. In fact, they have to work. Think about how many games, and I'm sure Peters is saying the same thing, where Terry doesn't even get the ball for the first half.
Yeah.
And that's not the quarterback's fault. You don't think they don't want to get Terry, who's been the best weapon here, the best option here for years? No, and I think that says something. The other thing I think is interesting, our good buddy Chris Russell said this the other day, so credit to him. It's either this year or next year, whatever it is, they have one of them is a void year, right? So they can move the money around.
Mhm.
So the dead cap hit on that is like 3.5, $3.8 million. They pay that no matter what.
Mhm.
So think about this in terms of contracts. If they pay Terry McLaurin $28 million this year, then also add on the 3.5 in dead cap money, you're back up to $32.5 million, which they didn't want to pay. And they know they have to pay because they got to pay the dead cap money.
Mhm.
Good point by Chris Russell. I think that's very
Great point.
interesting. Those are the little tiny things that go into these negotiations to where it's not just like just give Terry the 33. If you give Terry 32 and they got to pay the dead cap, now he's almost up to $36 million. No
Mhm.
way, no how.
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up a good point. Like I love Terry. I think he's a great player, but there are some wide receivers where they're an extension of the run game to an extent, right? Like CD Lamb, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, they throw the ball on first down and second down to gain 5 yards, a quick pass to those wide receivers that are moving down the field. I want Terry to be that, but I haven't seen that consistently over the years. It's a chicken or the egg. When I say that, people are like, "Oh, now he has Jaden Daniels, so Jaden Daniels can do that more often with him." But I just haven't seen it consistently, and that's the hard part too. Like this was the outlier year for him. 13 touchdowns is unique. Prior to this, was 4 to 5 touchdowns per year, which was solid. He was always flirting with about 1,000 yards, but we do want that dominance with that pay. So you do. That's where I can see the argument for like not having to pay Terry McLaurin. But on the other aspect, the whole point of there's two sides to the argument. I say I would love it if Terry just settles on 28. The other side of the argument is Jay Dino's still in his rookie contract. If you are going to pay for anything right now, you might want to surround him with talent and to go for it and just to pay for Terry anyway and just put the chips in. I guess the other thing is, are there any wide receivers that are even like if you're going to let Terry McLaurin walk or go to a different direction with it? Obviously, you want to draft the wide receiver potentially, but you have to get a top 10 for an immediate impact player. And do you want to waste a year or two of development with Jaden Daniels? Like, are there any other big wide receivers that are out there that you'd rather have? I guess so. That's another thing.
There's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the easy answer, right? I mean, you could look to Amari Cooper, I guess, but if he's actually retired, then that takes him off the board. No, and again, it's all fun to talk about, and it's basically what we've got at this point of the year. But I see there's like I give it a 5. Nothing is 0, right? So I give Terry not playing week 1 a 5% chance, maybe 10%. I think it's that low, and because again, he's got no leverage. The only thing they can do is go into Adam Peters' office and say, "You've already pushed your chips in. We know you've pushed your chips in. You can't get to where you want without our guy. So just give him the money." And I think Adam Peters is, I think what we're learning about Adam Peters here in the last week or two is his response will be, I'll call you. There's the door. Like, that's not how we do business here. And we don't do business. I'm not going to give you an extra $4 million because I got it. Right. Like, I mean, that's kind of the argument you were making earlier, which I've heard a lot of people make. We've got the money. We're trying to do this. Let's just do it. And I think what Adam Peters is telling you is I'm not overpaying anybody just because I can. And then you get into the habit of overpaying guys that really aren't worth it. And we're not going to do that in Washington. And for the crowd that are sad about Terry potentially not being here, Jerry Rice played in a Raiders jersey, right? Art Monk played in a Jets jersey. Like, Julio Jones played in a Titans jersey. So the chance that your beloved Terry ends his career in burgundy gold, there's a better chance he doesn't than he does. Let's just get him for the next year or two. And to your point, you got to draft wide receivers every year. The good teams draft wide receivers every year. You can't have too many of those guys. Ben Standig has been on a heater about Brian Robinson. Now, you know how I feel about this. I've been pushing the narrative. Ben's late. I've been talking about this for months now that I really think Corey Krosky-Merritt, Lil Bill, is a better running back than Brian Robinson and has a better chance of being more impactful. Now, you hear Cliff Kingsbury today say Brian Robinson's one of those guys that needs to be in a game with pads on before you can actually see what he brings to the offense. And then I got to thinking this morning, maybe we've read this all wrong. Maybe Bill's coming for Eckler's job and not Brian Robinson's job.
All right, well, I'll jump on that. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to Marcus. Thank you for jumping in the chat, Marcus.
Yes.
I appreciate it. He said Terry McLaurin's getting bad advice from his agent. Now I'm more concerned about Noah Brown not being available, and it's time to sign Amari Cooper. I'm not opposed to that. I mean, adding more talent to the room is definitely, I think, is very valid. Amari Cooper is a veteran. If he wants to play, more power to him. He didn't really produce with Josh Allen in Buffalo.
No,
That's the one concern that I have to add him. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt. I think Luke McCaffrey's having a poor camp. Like from what I was rooting for Luke McCaffrey. I wanted him to have a great camp. But from what I'm hearing is they're playing him with the ones. He's not getting separation. He's not standing out. So they're giving him every opportunity to shine. But
real quick, can I jump in? Can I jump in here real quick, George?
Yeah.
Something interesting I like about the wide receiver room is that they did it. This reminds me of Jay Gruden, Terry McLaurin with Jalen Lane. They didn't play him really at all in that first game. Remember when they did that with Terry and everybody was like, why on earth isn't Terry getting any work in the preseason? And it's because they had already seen enough that they didn't want everybody else to see it. And I feel like that's what we're getting with this kid.
We'll see. I mean, people love Jalen Lane because he's the Virginia Tech guy. I think there's a natural rivalry between Maryland and Virginia Tech. So like people love Jalen Lane. They want to push him through. I don't know if it's there yet. Like I heard he's having a pretty good camp, but I don't know if he's having an elite. The person that's having an awesome camp that people are kind of hearing about and it's kind of bubbling is Trey Amos. I think Trey Amos is going to be that special player that's going to stand out. He's going to be the one that's going to be the standout rookie. It seems like Josh Conley is still growing. It seems like Jalen Lane's going to be a pretty shifty punt returner, but I don't know if he's going to walk in day one as a wide receiver 3. That's my personal opinion. I'd love to see him pop, but I just don't know if it's going to be there. I think he could potentially get there. Luke McCaffrey, I'm worried about. I'm concerned about him, so we'll see how that goes. But I hope so, Doug. That'd be fantastic. Going back to your original question, I think I listened to that podcast with Ben Stanek and Nikki Javala, and they were talking about. It was all hypothetical. I think what I like about Ben is he thinks outside the box. I think he is very inquisitive, and he does put in the work. So there might be some validity before Brian Robinson potentially could go somewhere else. But I don't know. I don't see the benefit of letting him walk. I think Brian Robinson or Eckler walk. I think that's a pretty balanced running back room, having Brian Robinson as the RB1, as kind of like the the enforcer on first and second down. I think Ja'Cory Krosky merits more of like a change of pace back, and I think Eckler is a good pass receiving back. And people sleep on the fact that Austin Eckler was a pretty good pass protector, Doug, and a third down back and protecting Jaden Daniels. Like we did some film work with him last year, and he protects Jaden very, very well. Yeah. So I wouldn't want to see any one of them go. I mean, the only way I could be potentially enticed by doing that is maybe Brian Robinson gets traded for a second tier wide receiver. We bring some wide receiver talent back to kind of balance out our wide receiver room because someone that stood out to me because I haven't talked to you about it was Jeremy McNichols. Actually, I don't think he's going to be like a major impact, but he actually looked pretty damn good against the Patriots. And it's like, maybe between McNichols and Rodriguez, they can kind of cover up what Brian Robinson is. Maybe Krosky Merritt's better than we think. It's a pretty well-rounded room, but like if I were to make a bet and if I were the coach, me personally, George, I think I'd rather roll out Brian Robinson, RB1, let Krosky Merritt kind of come around because 17 games, someone's going to get hurt. And why thin out a position when you don't have to, in my opinion?
If the Houston Texans offered you a fifth round or, they've got a loaded wide receiver room. I'm trying to think of the guy from Alabama that we tried to get.
Yeah, John Mechie.
Right, yeah. John Mechie. Like, does that entice you?
If they throw me Mechie and a fifth-round pick for Brian Robinson,
it'd probably be one or.
Yeah.
Either a fifth or Mechie, but either Mechie and maybe a sixth or something. Do either of those entice you if you're Adam Peters?
It depends on how good McCroskey Merritt is.
Not going to be back next year.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a one-year rental, right? So they're giving you a fifth or Mechie for a one-year rental there. I don't know. For me, I'd rather have one. Like for me, I think I'd rather have Robinson personally. Maybe I'm more of a conservative investor or roster builder. I don't want to have right now. My wide receiver room is vulnerable. Mechie would be a pretty decent piece, but he hasn't really proven that much in the NFL yet either. So it's kind of a 50-50 spot. right now, I'm actually confident in our running back room. I think Brian Robinson, I think he could be. He has proven to be a yearly 800 yard back. He could be 1,000 yard back with 17 games, in my opinion. Right. So I'm not really. I wouldn't want to give that away for a 5th rounder next year, in my opinion. And then also having Krosky Merritt as a potential, bottle rocket or potential firecracker, even can really pop up and put some good numbers up. I would balance.
More important to get Bill's speed on the field with Debo and Jaden, or the sledgehammer that kind of is Brian Robinson? Is it nice to have that change of pace, or are we let's get as fast as we can?
I think it's best that be as fast as you can. NFL speed kills, baby. You have to have that out there. And I think having Debo, Jalen Lane, I think having Krosky Merritt on there. I think Krosky Merritt, I think we saw it, and I'm sure we haven't talked about it. But I'm sure you saw it as well. He has that pop. He has that elusiveness. He had his, that power at the end of his runs. You saw that stand out, and it was pretty impressive. And I think people are talking about him too. I think that too. It's funny. Trey Amos is the one everyone's talking about. It seems like he's our first rounder talent that we have in our team. People love Krosky Merritt, and I think he's going to do very good as well. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. My only concern with him is he didn't really play football last year. Can he go from not playing at all to 17 games in the NFL with bigger players? So that's why I think it's important, because Brian Robinson isn't costing much now, or he's going to leave at the end of the year. I don't see him as a burden for the team. And me being at Ashburn, I've been there a couple of times for training camp, it's not like he is a negative aspect of the team as well. I saw him running up and down the sideline, high-fiving all the fans, signing autographs for hour after practice, dancing on the side. He seems like he's very happy and very comfortable where he's at. So I don't think he feels concerned or feels stretched, which is a good thing too. So if he's just not worried about a running back by committee and everything's all good, why break it up, in my opinion?
Marcus, I'm with you about McNichols. I think the nice thing about McNichols and Rodriguez, both those guys, if they want to keep them, I think they can get on the practice squad. Bill, I don't think it's on the practice squad, right? So we were talking about this the other day on the pod, and it's basically like if they keep 4 running backs, they kind of would have to, if they want one of those guys, I think both of them can go on the practice squad, and then you keep the 3. I think it will be interesting to see how that shakes out. I get your point where keeping Brian Robinson doesn't hurt you. It doesn't affect you. It can only be a good thing unless somebody is willing to give you a 5th round pick. A 5th round pick would be hard to turn down a 5th round pick for a guy won't be back next year. But for a team like Houston, who has running back issues, I mean, it sounds like the starter over there is not.
So Chubb is injured, not looking great, right? And don't they have Woody Marks from USC over there as well?
They did. They drafted Woody Marks, but the number one, Joe Mixon, is
Joe Mixon. That's a pretty good running back room.
But it sounds like he's not going to be ready anytime soon.
Yeah.
So it seemed like that could be interested in a guy like Brian Robinson, and getting rid of a 5th may not be a big deal. When I had Rio on yesterday or Wednesday, I guess, I asked him who he thought would have the biggest impact on the team that nobody's talking about. I'll ask you the question, but first I'll give you his answer. He said Javon Kinlaw. So he doesn't think enough people are talking about Kinlaw and the size that he brings, and you're essentially swapping John Allen out and bring Kinlaw in. Like, a lot of people thought for years that John Allen and Deron Payne were too close to doing the same thing, that they didn't really like yin and yang each other in a way that was productive. Javon Kinlaw is not that. He's a humongous human being in a room full of humongous human beings. The other one is Dietrich Wise, who is extremely big. And you talk about for so many years, there was whispers of complaints about how serious that defensive line room was. And part of that I get. Like, think about how many rookies you had on that line
all
for
young.
a while. Like
23, 24.
Sweat was the eldest statesman on that defensive line for years. And so then you think about like Dietrich Wise coming in, who was a captain for the Patriots. Like, he gets business and how to get things done. I am a big fan of the Kinlaw signing. They gave him some money. So again, Peter's looking for guys that he knows well. That was Rio's. Who is a guy that you are looking at that people aren't really talking about?
That's a great question because Kinlaw's a great answer because everything you alluded to and everything Rio said was correct. I think he is going to be impact. I think the floor for our run defense has gone up exponentially, right? I think we might not be the best pass rushing team, like in the entire NFL, but I think our floor for stopping the run is going to be very, very strong. So I do feel that's a good one. It's hard because I have a couple ones that are in my mind, but they're all the big ones. Like I think Mike Sanders still is going to have a great year. I think he's going to have a huge impact. I think Deebo Samuel is also going to have a pretty big impact for the team, especially with McLaurin being out. I'm trying to think of someone under the radar that no one's talking about. I don't know. Well, let me say this one. I don't know if it's a controversial, but like we talked about this before. I think Marshawn Lattimore, Doug, is the skeleton key to this team. Like I think if he is a all-star cornerback again, if he it can revert to being the true CB1 and Trey Amos is as good as everyone says he is, I think that will change the whole outlook of our team. I think it's going to be like, hey, we're no longer a 10-7, 9-8 team. We are a 11-6, 12-4, 12-5 again. But now we actually we can make some noise in the playoffs. So like those are the guys I'm keeping an eye on. And then deep down, I'm still rooting for Connerly. I know he kind of people are saying he's kind of having a rough camp. I like Connerly a lot. I watched him in college, and I thought he was a very active and very athletic tackle. And he's starting to get it now. And if Connerly, if the light switches, hits midway through the season, that's gonna be a lot of fun because he's very similar. I'm not saying he is Trent Williams, but he has very similar get out in the open field and run down and blow up the safety type of guy. He can do that. I'm excited to watch that.
I posted this the other day, and I don't think people understood the concept. I think they thought I was comping them. But what I was trying to do was say that this group with Connerly and then Simmons right behind him, they could have had Simmons from Ohio State instead. A lot of people had him ranked higher. They took Connerly. It reminds me of the Trent Williams draft when Skins take Trent Williams and then a couple of picks later, the Seahawks take Russell Okung, which was one of those, let's watch them through their careers and see who's better. Now we saw how that worked out. And I'm not suggesting there's any parallels between these two, but it just was interesting to me because I think down the line we'll remember that Simmons pick and we'll watch. I know I will watch because he's looked really good in the Chiefs camp so far, right? The other thing I'll say for those watching about Connerly, and we talked about this all draft cycle, but for those that didn't watch those episodes, first of all, shame on you. But what many people that are way more connected in to the whole process than we are told us that if Connerly had come out next year, he'd have been a top 5, top 10 pick if he'd had the same production. Didn't give up a sack last year. Same production next year, he would have been a top 5, top 10 pick. He went late this year because teams were concerned about his play strength and needing a year to get stronger. Commanders were obviously willing to bet on the upside. I love upside. You love upside, but I think it's important for the fans to understand that may be what we're looking at a little bit this year is some growing pains as he puts on some more of that grown man weight. Again, 21 years old, right? Like former basketball player. It's all there. They've just got to get him, trained up and get some of that NFL weight on him. And I think you're right. Felix was on with us yesterday. I asked him the same question. He said, fans were so excited. Well, fans were surprised when they let go of Jeremy Chin. This group brought in Will Harris because he can cover and tackle better, particularly covering better. They are super excited about him. You talk about a skeleton key, but getting a guy that can play safety, come down in the box, and allow the free safety Quan to kind of move around the field and do different things, like in a room where they're going to want 3 or 4 safeties on the field a bunch. If Will Harris is anything, if him and Quan Martin can become one of those 2 duos that you really like that can rock and roll and switch places and move all around, that's something they haven't really had in a while. It's something that Ron always wanted, but Jeremy Chin, let's say, couldn't do it, right? That was a pure strong safety. You were not moving around the field a whole bunch. Whereas with Will Harris, at least from this standpoint of this group with the coaches, they like what he can do. Will Harris has said he loves this defense and what it allows for the secondary to do. Think about with Dan Quinn with the Cowboys. Those weren't household corner names or safety names at the time, other than a couple of them. And a lot of those guys went on to have career years. So I'm curious to see. I liked his answer about Will Smith. And then I think, it won't be what defines the season, but I was really excited about what Dorrance Armstrong was doing at the end of last year in the playoffs. And if they can get, last year that was the only guy they really kind of gave money to, him and Luvu. And if they can get out of him what they think, then the rotation for the D line with Johnny Newton becomes, I think, really impactful.
Johnny Newton might be that guy that we were talking about, Doug, that no one's really talking about. They're just starting to talk about him now. Like, no one really brought him up during camp. Then he really popped during preseason. Like, what I was hearing coming out of camp, I don't know if you and I heard different, was that, like, where is he going to play? Javon Kinlaw came in, and Deron Payne came in. Like, he was, they had Daniel Goleman, who's like almost like a gigantic, nose tackle. They're going to put him in there at that position at some point. They're like, where does Johnny Newton actually fit? And then he popped out during the Patriots game, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg, or people kind of like, claiming things now, but they're like, oh, I told you about Johnny Newton. Everyone's kind of hyping him up now. So even the big reporters are saying that now. So if he does pop out, that would be great. And that's something to keep an eye on. Like, I think the defensive line is such an unknown because it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of average to above average players. Like, no one's really elite, but maybe with this system, somebody pops out and stands out, which would be really cool. That'll be fun. So I think Frankie Luvu, when he came over from Carolina, people were excited about him. Like, we didn't really know what it was going to be. But then once he came here, he fit and it hit. And hopefully one of our D linemen pop out like that.
It wouldn't surprise me if Frankie Luvu led the team in sacks this year.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised by that. Like, not at all. And then one more thing that I found interesting, I'm going to keep an eye on. When I was listening to Ben Standing and Dick Javalov on their podcast, on Ben Standing's podcast, they were talking about, like, Ben kind of alluded to that he's talked to Jason Witt, and Jason Witt said he's more excited about running his style of coverage now that he has the players for it. And that kind of light bulb for me. I'm like, what does that mean, right? So last year they rolled out Benjamin St-Juste, they rolled out Emmanuel Forbes, they rolled out Mike Davis. They didn't have the talent that they had that they do this year, and maybe that's why the defense struggled. Because, like, I'll be open with you, Witt wasn't really that impressive to me. I thought our defense wasn't that great last year.
He needs a good year this year, I think. I'm with you.
I agree. For a coaching staff that's a defensive staff, like, Dan Quinn or Witt, all these guys that came over, you would think defense would lead the way, but actually Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden carried the team last year. So that's going to be awesome. Like, if our defense regresses toward the middle of the NFL and becomes a pretty good defense, and our offense doesn't have to be top 5, then we'll be a really good team again. So I'm interested by that. And I'm curious, like, what happens if Trey Amos is a hit, dude? That'd be fantastic. Like, what happens if he's like a legit player? Like, and Marshawn, like, that's going on in my mind. Like, what happens if Marshawn Lattimore is a borderline Pro Bowler again? Like, maybe he doesn't have to be a Pro Bowler, but he's up there. And then Trey Amos is in the running for Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year as a cornerback. And we have both of those people on our team. Then we're really cooking with Frankie Luvu and a high run defense, and Jane Daniels on offense. And we have ball control, and we're starting to look really, really good. So that's what I'm excited about.
You mentioned the players that had been jettisoned from that cornerback room. I'll do you one better and tell you the players that came in instead. Let's assume you get a healthy Marshawn Lattimore. We'll call him a new player because he really wasn't what they expected last year. Or maybe that's what they expected last year, knowing he wasn't quite right. They really were more hoping for this year to see what he had. Trey Amos, who by all accounts has cornerback 1 potential. Remember, they brought in Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. They thought he was going to be the starting corner until they drafted Trey Amos. Noah Igbenogany now becomes cornerback 5 as Mikey
Great
Sanders.
player. He was blowing people up on the Patriots game. He's playing awesome.
That is cornerback 5 currently on this roster with Mikey Sanders back into the slot. Sounds like he hasn't missed a beat. It was one thing I was a little nervous about. Everybody just assumed Mikey was going to seamlessly go back into the nickel. Remember, he's only played corner for 4 years now. He was a wide receiver before that. And last year, he didn't get much work in the nickel because they had to move him outside because of how bad those corners were. It's not the same position outside and inside corner, not by a while. So I thought maybe it would be tough or at least slow from him out of the gate. Looks like he's had a really good camp. It's amazing how they've turned what was one of the bigger weaknesses on the team last year into what I think can be one of the bigger strengths this year.
I agree. I think we talked about it earlier a couple of weeks ago, and it's a running dialogue between you and us. They basically changed the defensive backs from one of the worst to the best. Same thing with the offensive line, right? So those are two of the most important positions on the entire field, and they had a plan for the defensive line. We'll see what happens with that, but it seems like almost immediate returns with the offense, like getting tons on plugging him in on the offensive line. Our offensive line's already better. We have Connolly in the pipeline and Brendan Coleman being the left guard. It's going to be fantastic, right? In my opinion. And I do think that, you're right. Noah I in this defense, maybe not on all other 31 teams, but on our particular team, he stands out. And that being CB5 is great. And Doug, you didn't touch on the fact that Quan Martin can play nickel as well, so he can come down in the box. And then Tyler Owens, he has that physical talent. We don't even know what he can do yet. He's still scratching the surface. So I like our DB. I like our defense, like our linebackers. It's funny, like people hate. I love Bobby Wagner. People kind of give him a hard time because he's older. But if you actually look at the NFL 100, we have 2 of the top NFL 100 linebackers on our roster right now. I was joking about it with my NFC East friends on my Best of Enemies podcast. I think we have the best linebacker group in the group, like in the NFC East. Like people love Zach Bond in Philadelphia, but dude, Frankie Luvu and Bobby Wagner together is great. So I'm pumped about that.
Those Eagle linebackers are pretty good, but I don't like giving those guys too much credit. The other thing we're talking about, Johnny Newton. I think a lot of people aren't thinking about this. Johnny Newton could end up being if Kinlaw is like more the nose next to Duran, and you've got Eddie Goldman. I wonder if Johnny Newton doesn't become the primary backup for Duran Payne, and then eventually just settles into Duran Payne's role next year. Like, I don't know about you, but again, another guy that I like Duran Payne. I just can't see him getting another contract here. I doubt it. I know he said he's made all the money and he's not worried about the money. Dudes are worried about the money, right?
Of course. Everybody
I
wants
don't believe that at all.
That's why we work.
I don't think he'll get it here. I don't. And
I don't think so either.
I think Johnny Newton was always
the plan,
the contingency plan for Duran Payne. It was never. I think people had this John Allen and Duran Payne, in their head, and they just figured, oh well, it'll be Newton and Duran Payne for a while. I don't think that's the case at all, particularly after they gave Kinlaw that, what was it? Was it 3 or 4 years? It was at least 3. So
I don't think they go more than, I think the Peters regime, the formula we're kind of watching now and observing now for 2 years is 3-year deals or 1-year deals. And it just offers great flexibility for the team, which I think is it's a dangerous game to play, but it's also a interesting game to play because every year we only have like 37 people on our roster. We have to get 15 more and add them on, but it actually makes your team flexible and moldable over the next. You're not stuck with bad contracts, which is actually a great deal.
All right, let's get out of here on this. What was your biggest takeaway from Sando today, who, by the way, was fantastic?
Sando is always fantastic. I love having him on the show. I think he loves it. It's a great passion project with the quarterbacks. I think he finds it very interesting. I think the big takeaway that I got, and I think it's starting to bubble across the league, is Caleb Williams approaching bust territory. Like, I think that's kind of the big thing that I pulled away. I'm not rooting against anybody, but I think it's
tough 1 year and the coaching staff's gone. But I hear you. He said people were like actually anti Caleb, which I thought was interesting. It wasn't just that they were kind of like down on him, but like people were not in on Caleb at all.
Yeah, because it seems like he holds on to the ball too long. He has poor decision making, and he, like, a lot of the concerns coming out of USC was all of that, right? And I think they hired Ben Johnson to fix Caleb Williams. If it doesn't work this year, what happens? And that's going to be very interesting. And the Bears have had plenty of opportunities to get quarterbacks. The Bears they have a pretty good team. They invested in the offensive line. They have a pretty good running back core. I'm actually envious of their wide receiver core. I wish I wish I had Roma Dunze and Luther Burden in Washington. So if Caleb Williams can't do it, and like Colson Loveland as a tight end, come on now. So if he can't do it with those positions, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears, like, you know what, year 3, I'm going to bring over Russell Wilson. I'm going to bring over Aaron Rodgers and bring someone else, like some sort of journeyman, and bring him over there, over in Chicago, and kind of watch it there.
Aaron Rodgers is the man that gets lost in time because of his shenanigans.
Yeah.
Like that guy, Sando said, had the most perfect seasons of any voter out there. I should have known that. That would be one of those trivia questions where you try to talk yourself into Brady or Manning. But Rodgers had like that 5, 6, 7-year run where he looked like the best guy who had ever played football before.
Aaron Rodgers, you nailed it, Doug. Aaron Rodgers in his prime was one of my favorite quarterbacks. He was a multiple-time MVP. His like touchdown to like interception ratio was absurd. It was like 46-4. It was like I don't know if you remember that. Like it was out of control. Like the least, it was like a 90 percentile difference. Like,
and he was still running too. And
he was running, and like people kind of sleep on him. He might not be the prototype of what an athletic quarterback looks like, but Aaron Rodgers was like the most gifted quarterback for multiple years, like the most arm talent. If you combine intelligence, arm talent, mobility, processing, all of that, was Aaron Rodgers. He was the best quarterback of all time for a couple of years. He's fantastic. I think Tom Brady is, the most like clutch. Tom Brady is the most competitive. Michael Vick's the best runner, but Aaron Rodgers was very, very well-rounded and elite for a couple of years. But now he's I think all the off-field stuff's kind of thrown it off a little bit.
Now he's a weirdo and a prick, and nobody thinks about him much anymore. We go from the Jets to the Steelers, but that was one of my bigger takeaways, was just like how much we sleep on prime Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how close we can get to that with Jaden.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, year one. I mean, this is the year. I mean, I think
that's right.
Last year was fantastic. Sorry, I got hiccups. Last year was fantastic. I really enjoyed this. It was a fantastic season. Miracle roller coaster ride. I'm pumped about it. This is the prove it year. Everybody that loves Jaden is crossing their fingers and hoping that it blows up again. Everybody that hates Jaden is rooting for his downfall. I hope he backs it up, man. I think he will. I think it's not rested on his legs. It's rested on his brain and his arm talent and his processing, and that doesn't go away. And I think his legs are the benefit that elevates him, but I think he has, if he took away 50% of his speed, I think he'd still be a pretty damn good quarterback. And that's why I'm happy about it.
I think you're right. Steve Young said he's the current prototype for what you want in a football player. Mm-hmm. I'll take Steve Young's opinion on quarterbacks.
Pretty good quarterback.
George, people have been asking about our 53-man projection. So for those that are looking for it, George and I'll get together and find a time, maybe next week, George, or maybe 2 weeks right before the season starts, before the Commanders drop theirs. We'll get on here and drop ours. So
sounds good. And if you guys are still watching, and Doug, for you too, at 4:30, we're doing Commanders Film Room with Mark Bullock. He's going to jump on. We're going to break down the film. We're going to look at the Patriots rookies. The rookies versus the Patriots. It'd be kind of fun to watch Connolly, Sanders Still, and Trey Amos.
That's today at 4:30.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we'll be on there. Cool.
Very good. Usually film room on Wednesday, special edition.
Usually on Wednesday, but as you know, Doug, work has been throwing me left turns and left and right, and Mark's being nice and accommodating me. So that's why we're doing it today.
All right, excellent. So we'll look out for that. All right, brother. I'll see you next week sometime, I'm sure.
All right, see you, man. Take care.
All right.